All right, so Professor David Yamani has been researching the sociology of guns. We're talking with him more next.
But first, hey, did you know we have a world-class flight training school here in San Diego? Pilots can fly almost every single day. We're close to the ocean, the desert, the mountains. That's why San Diego is one of the best places to learn how to fly in the world. You can learn to fly in sunny San Diego right at Montgomery Field. Getting started is real easy. Call 858-569-1822 or learn to fly with SDFTI. But I'd call them at 858-569-1822. All right, well, that's Alicia. I see we have a special guest on the line.
We do. We have Professor David Yamani. David, are you there?
I am here. Thanks so much for having me.
Our pleasure.
All right.
So, Alicia, I'm going to go ahead and let you chat with him for just a moment.
All right. Hey, David. So I hear that you are with Gun Culture, Sociology of Guns, and non-traditional groups. I'm curious, how long has your Sociology of Gun groups class been running?
Well, so we just started the fall semester at Wake Forest University where I teach the class, and this is the 8th academic year that I've taught the class. So I've taught it one semester every year for the past 8 years.
Okay, so I'm going to be the dummy in the room. What would I get if I took out the college schedule and I found your class? What would be on the front page to entice me to come take your class?
Well, I think just having the term guns in the title would be a big inducement to taking the class for you, but it's also, a very big inducement for a lot of our students, many of whom don't have any direct involvement in gun culture, but, really aware that guns are a pretty spectacular presence in American society, for many good reasons and some bad reasons. So that's the kind of students who I get taking the course, or people who are, they're just interested in guns, they're interested in trying to understand them better, and most often don't have any background in guns or gun culture.
Gotcha.
So where are these classes happening at?
So I teach at Wake Forest University. It's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's a private university, about 5,000 students, part of the Atlantic Coast Conference. So if you're a basketball fan or increasingly a football fan, you may have heard of it.
Are they all in person, or are any of them available online?
Course is taught just in person for students who are enrolled at the university. A lot of people ask me about possibly taking the course, but it hasn't really panned out. I think a lot of people are interested in taking the course free. So when they say, "Oh, I'd love to take your course," I say, "Well, let's talk about what that would cost." They're like, "Oh, well, I'm not so interested anymore." People are so used to getting content free these days that when the idea of paying tuition comes up, can be kind of a conversation stopper.
Right. So, when I used to teach at the college as well, and it was a pay class, just kind of like what you're going to. And I always like to track how many came in and didn't know what it was doing and how many left. Did you see? Yeah, I know. It's like, what do you mean you didn't read the schedule? You didn't see what this was about? This is not a cooking show. Do you run into that very much, or are these people pretty savvy?
Yeah, but these students are pretty savvy. It's a pretty selective university, and so the students all come from pretty solid backgrounds. But one thing that is sort of different, I think, about this class as compared to other classes on guns that are taught at the university level, at least, is that I require the students to go to the gun range at the very beginning of the class. And we can talk more about that if you're interested. But so because of that, all the students have to have a specific permission from me to enroll in the course. So I don't get a ton of students dropping because they kind of know what they're interested in guns, and they also know what they're getting themselves into.
Right. Well, you're pre-screening them before you go through the whole, start of a program, and then they go, well, when's lunch? That's okay. This is the wrong class for you.
Yeah. Well, this is not typically a problem that we have, although sometimes the students are out to lunch even when they're enrolled in the class.
I know.
I don't. I don't screen them for their views about guns or
There
their
you
past
go.
experience or anything. I just want them to know at the start, like, look, this course is going to take in all different aspects of guns. It's
Right.
not just going to look at gun violence or criminology or those sorts of approaches. And you don't have to shoot when you go to the range, but you have to go to the range field trip just so you can see firsthand what guns are about.
Yeah.
And that really sets a foundation for the class going forward, because again, especially most of the students have no experience or very limited experience with guns.
Well, they're kids. Hey, Joe shot a gun. Hey, maybe I'll go shoot a gun. And then it just kind of goes down the. Who do you see the most excited to shoot, the girls or the boys?
Well, the class tends to have more women than men in it, and the men tend to have a bit more experience with guns. But I think
Interesting.
the people who are the most excited about it are the people who don't have any experience at all. So, this semester I have 16 students in the class. 11 of them had never shot a gun before. And, so they were understandably extremely nervous going in,
Right.
which I said that's a totally appropriate emotion to have when you're dealing with firearms and you don't know what you're doing. So, just do a very gradual introduction. We shoot a 22 pistol, and we shoot a 9mm pistol, and we end up shooting a AR-style rifle. And all of the 16 students shot all three of those guns, including the 11 students who had never shot before.
Wow.
It was a pretty profound experience for a lot of them.
Well, it's funny. We were talking to a guest earlier, and I just it was an observation. Wasn't she a psychologist?
Amanda,
Yeah.
NRA board.
Well, she was something else too, I thought. But anyway, so I just asked her because from what I've seen, and maybe you can address this, but when women get guns and get trained, they are way more excited than guys. I mean, they just take it so much. Like Amanda was, or Alicia was telling me, what'd you say? You shot and you were almost ready to roll in a week.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you see that when women jump onto it quicker than guys? It's just an
I
observation.
think that there's a sort of an expectation, I think, in a lot of places that guys know how to do certain things, right?
There's
So,
some machismo with it.
and you're not supposed to get excited about doing things that guys are supposed to know how to do. So, actually, I think in my class, because going in, a lot of the students don't have any background, and everybody knows they don't have any background. That they are able to express some of those emotions of fear, nervousness, and also excitement more than they might at your local public range or gun shop.
Interesting.
So, hearing that so many of your students come into your course without a whole lot, little to none gun experience, I'm curious: are there a whole lot of preconceptions or just assumptions that they come in with that that they relate to you? I'm curious, kind of what they come in with.
Yeah, I think that for those that come with no experience with guns, they tend to have mostly negative preconceptions. The guns are harmful. These students tend to be traditional college age. They're 20, 21, 22 years old, and they're really the kind of school shooting generation. They were in elementary school when Sandy Hook happened. They were in high school when Parkland happened, and so that really heavily colors their understanding of what guns are all about. So they do, when they end up having the opportunity to shoot and they find it exciting or challenging. Some of them, especially the women, talk about feeling empowered or feeling powerful when they're shooting. That they have to deal with that cognitive dissonance of having largely negative preconceptions going in, but realizing that it wasn't a negative experience they were having at the range. So that's something that they have to, kind of come to terms with.
I love that. And I hear that quite a bit as well. I do private instruction, and I do have a number of people that have come to me, whether it be the current state of the world today, the riots that we've had locally here in San Diego, just the way that the world is moving towards, they see a need to come in and get some training. They don't want it, but they feel that they need it just in case. And so a lot of people come to me, and I imagine it sounds like it's about the same as what you're saying, is that they come with a fear and with these preconceived ideas, and they're having to push through that. And I do see that same thing happening on my end as well. And so it's very common, I believe.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the female students, I have them write a reflection paper after they visit the range, and a lot of the female students will talk about, I'd never thought about being a gun owner before, but this is something that now maybe seems possible. I may be living alone after I graduate from college. These sorts of considerations is probably exactly, these are the kinds of people that probably end up contacting you for instruction down the road.
Very likely. Very likely. Yeah, I'm curious. What is the most significant takeaway? They go through this course. For a number of weeks. I would imagine maybe even months. I'm not sure how long your courses are. But what do you find is the greatest takeaway? You look at them at the beginning of the course and you see how they've grown and the progression. What is the biggest takeaway that you see them leave with at the end of the semester?
I think the biggest takeaway that they have is that things are more complex than they might seem. And actually, this is true for the students who come from, really strong gun backgrounds all the way to people who have none. That the people who have no experience with guns realize that there are many positive uses that people have for guns. There's, sport, there's hunting, there's tradition, obviously self-defense. And the people who, are very comfortable or, maybe even came out of a gun culture realize that there are reasons why there are people in the United States who have reservations about guns because they come from just a vastly different experience, set, understanding. So, I don't teach any particular line. I just teach that the world is more complex than any of us.
All right, David.
Hey, Dave, can you hang with us for another segment?
Yeah, sure. Happy to.
All right. Hey, PRMI Mortgage. Boy, I tell you what, primeres.com/Alpine. If you're looking to buy, refi, or if you're considering a reverse mortgage, call our local mortgage guy that you can trust. Call Chris Wiley at PRMI Mortgage. For nearly 25 years, Chris has been helping local San Diegans with all their mortgage needs. They make it easy. Work with a friendly expert team that will help you get the best deal on a mortgage. Call Chris Wiley at 619-722-1303 or primeres.com/Alpine. All right, we got David Yamane on the line, and he is coming to us today, and we're going to chat a little bit about what were we talking about?
Sociology of guns.
There you go.
That's it.
So, continue on with your comment there, kid. I think you had one.
Just by way of continuing what we were talking about in the last segment, I was just curious: are there any lessons that you, David, you normally are in a classroom with a set number of students? Well, you now have a radio program with, I don't know, I think we have 12 listeners. You have an audience that you otherwise don't have, and I'm curious, what are some lessons that you would like to share with like-minded in the gun community that you have the ear of today?
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of the things that I try to convey to the students who I have who come from outside of gun culture for the most part are, things like the fact that guns are normal and normal people use guns, that self-defense is a very common reason for gun ownership today, things like that. So, I assume your listeners are all on board with things like that. But, I think that for people who are sort of invested in guns, gun ownership, when you're dealing with people who are coming from outside of your reality, try to understand why they have the particular understanding of guns that they do, right? So, don't treat them as if they're foolish, don't treat them as if they're naive, because, these are students who have reasons for believing what they believe about guns. It's a limited set of beliefs based on a limited set of experiences, but if you, approach them, with an open mind, and you might even say an open heart to try to, explain to them why guns make sense to you, you're likely to make more inroads than, if you just get red in the face and yell and tell people, that they don't know what they're talking about. So, I think the college setting is conducive to that kind of approach, but, we can take that outside of, college settings and have a little bit of of empathy and try to understand people who don't agree with us on the gun issue. And I think that makes a lot more inroads, and you can kind of try to win the hearts and minds of people. Even if they never become gun owners, they may become more sympathetic to the types of things that gun owners want.
So now you see why we do this show. I mean, you're doing it from one direction and we're trying to do it from another direction, and just get people to look at both sides. Calm down, look at both sides. Now, we're not trying to convince you. We just want to educate you.
Yeah. And through education, you can do a lot of convincing.
Yeah.
People typically have to come to things, on their own time and on their own terms. And, when I finish the class, it's not like a student who began the class very anti-gun is pro-gun at the end of the class.
No.
But they have a little bit of insight into why a pro-gun position makes sense.
Right.
And that, I hope that they continue to educate themselves along those lines, as they grow older. And
well, it's almost like you're educating these kids about guns, and if they at the end they say, "Yeah, it's not for me," or "It's for me," you've done your job. You've at least given them both sides of the story. And the last and most important thing is when you go to the ballot box, at least you'll be intelligent enough to know about the gun industry and gun ownership that you'll make the right decision. Not an emotional decision, but the right decision. And I think that's a benefit from your class.
Yeah. And, honestly, I don't even pitch the class as being, a pro-gun class. I'm just sort of pro-truth. And, I feel like, the truth and understanding, will lead people in, the direction that makes most sense to them. And that if they have more understanding of something at the end of the semester, they're more likely to at least have the possibility of moving in that direction.
Yeah. Did you ever wonder about going to class, the first day of class, in boots, cowboy pants, and a rifle? I mean, just think about it. Get the shirt, the hat. I mean, the very first day, you'd have their attention for the rest of the semester. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Well, let me tell you, because before we even meet in a classroom, as a class, we meet out at the range.
Oh.
And, that sort of solidarity that we build as a class, out at the range really carries through for the rest of the semester. I think that students will always think of me as being the guy who
took me to a gun range.
How to use these guns, right? And even though after every class after that, I'm there in my shirt and my bow tie and my jacket. There's still something about me is being the guy that's showing them how to load a 30-round magazine into an AR and have them shooting that gun.
Jeez.
You can imagine going from never having touched a gun before to shooting 10 rounds of 22, 10 rounds of 9mm, and then straight to the rifle.
Wow.
And it's very instructive for them. Like even little things, they shoot the 9mm, a Glock 17 from maybe 10 yards. They're all over the paper. Looks like a shotgun round. And then they shoot the AR from 25 yards with a red dot. And they all have these tiny little groups. And that in itself is instructive for them.
Mm-hmm.
Just understanding the technology of the gun, how much easier it is to shoot a rifle, different sighting systems. And so, that's not anything that they're taking the class to learn, but, it's fun to introduce them to some of those things.
Well, those things may stick. I mean, you just never know where their lives will, take them. At least they have, they have that knowledge, that they can take with you. I think that sounds like a really cool class.
Yeah.
Does it stay full all semester? Does it stay pretty full all semester?
Yeah. The class is always capped at 16 students. I get 16 sign up right away. I always have some on the waiting list. A couple people drop it. It's rarely
very rare. Yeah.
The class is in pretty high demand because I only teach it once a year, and I keep thinking, well, this is going to be the year when the students' interest in guns drop off. But if you imagine from 2015 to today, no one's interest in guns have dropped off.
No, if anything, it's increased.
it's increasing, right?
But so's the awareness
that's
too. I think the awareness is starting to get out there more and more from both, left and right. Yeah, I don't care what side you're on, but if it stirs up enough for you to dig into it and find out what's really going on, that's the key.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that these last couple of years we've seen a lot of people getting into guns who either people never thought they would get into guns or they themselves never thought they would get into guns, and those people come from a huge range politically, economically, demographically, every different way, and so that also challenges people's understanding. It's one thing if Crazy Bob across the street's a gun nut. It's another thing if your next door neighbor who you really like, who, is a trans woman,
right? She's
getting into guns, right? And then you're like, well, now I can hate Bob. I can't hate this person that I like. Yeah. That's a game changer in a lot of ways also.
Well, exactly. And heaven knows where this is all going to go. Since you are a teacher, are there any books out there that you recommend just for the general public that they should, that kind of gives you not exactly what you teach, but kind of a road they could travel, some publication or a book?
Oh man, that's a tough question because there's really no single great book about guns in American society, but I think one of the best books that's very approachable and tells the kind of recent history is this book called Glock by Paul Barrett, who he was a reporter. He tells the story of the Glock as a company and how it came to develop its pistols, but he also sets it in the context of recent history, right? So all of those things that people remembered at the time but have now forgotten, but like the idea that these plastic pistols would be able to pass through metal detectors, then you have the transition from police, away from more limited capacity guns toward, these semi-automatic guns, takes it all the way through the 90s with the assault weapons ban, which you recall was also a large capacity magazine ban, and into the 21st century. So I really like that book. I've read it 2 or 3 times, and it's a good story. And he's open-minded. He's not a gun guy, but he's open-minded, and it's fun to read a story about a single thing, but it's really telling a much broader story. So I'd recommend Paul Barrett's book Glock.
Okay. All right, my lovely assistant wrote it down, so we'll see if we can't get on. What I'd like to do is read it and then have him come back or have him call in and we can talk about it.
Okay.
I learned a long time ago if you're going to interview an author, you darn sure better read his book because it makes for a really tough interview if you don't do it. Been there, done that. Well, and so how does this, what school are you at?
Wake Forest University.
Okay. How have they accepted this this class? I mean, you're only doing it once a year.
Yeah. It's people are often amazed that I both teach the class and that also that they let me take the students to the gun range. But I never really asked permission. I just thought this was an important part of what I want to teach, and I think there's a lot of academic freedom that we have to teach, as long as we're teaching legitimate material.
Yeah.
And there were times when the administration had money that they would give faculty to take their students on field trips, and I got that money to take my students on these field trips to the gun store and the gun range.
Wow.
So if anybody objected to it, they haven't told me directly, and so.
And you're still doing it. Well, hey man, this has been an awesome interview. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day. I got a sneaky feeling we're going to be hunting you down the road, see how things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk to you.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. You can watch us live every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, right here on our YouTube channel, or if you're in the San Diego area, you can listen to us on 1170 a.m. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can help restore and protect the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.